What's going on, everyone? This is Sheena, aka Sheenapreneur, your favorite veteran, and today we're going to talk about what to do when it's time for you to bid on a contract. So we'll talk about that after the intro. Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. Here on the Sheenapreneur channel, I share information about government contracting, veteran business content, and other business tips. Okay, everyone, so most of you all know that have been following me for a while. I do bid on contracts. I also build relationships. I also do subbing. I also try to do forecasting, which means that you find a contract that's coming up for due and then you try to get into the contracting officer's ear and try to be the sole source or some sort of contender for that upcoming contract. But most of the time, myself and my team are bidding on contracts. So bidding on contracts just means that you find a solicitation, whether we have multiple systems that we use, such as GovDirections, BidNet Direct, the local state of Georgia DOAS website. We have multiple things that we use for bid delivery for solicitations and bids, ITBs, RFQs, RFPs that come to my inbox pretty much daily. So we bid on contracts, and bidding just means that you take those documents, it's already out. It's either set aside for small business, on the federal side, it's set aside for small business, woman-owned, service-disabled, veteran-owned companies, or on the local side, it's just out here for anyone to bid on. So by bidding, that just means you take those documents and you fill them out, you write a proposal typically, or you just give the numbers for those particular documents and tell this agency, yes, I'm going to charge you X amount of dollars in order to do this thing or to provide this thing. So with us, we mostly do janitorial, but we also do other services such as landscaping, flooring, painting, electrical, a little bit of roofing, siding, welding. We do a whole bunch of stuff. My company, Foresight Industries, is a facility management company, so we do a lot of stuff that's kind of like light construction. So with us, let's just use janitorial, for example. If we do a janitorial contract, we may say, okay, this is the space. The agency says we have one building that is 50,000 square feet. And we say, okay, boom, we need to see this location. Usually when it comes to services, you kind of want to see the location unless you're doing construction and you're building it. That's where you get into like looking at plans and you're kind of providing what the agency is going to need in order to build. But most of our stuff is already in existence and they just need like a new something or they need a replacement of something. So it's something that was already in existence, we put it back together, or it was already being cleaned and now they need people to clean it, a new company to clean it. So it's already in existence. Same thing with facility maintenance, like O&M, which is operations and maintenance, where we do the HVAC system or we do the piping or anything like that. But generally speaking, we do a lot of janitorial. So the agency may say this space is 50,000 square feet. We need it done from after 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. And usually the 5 p.m., it could be anytime after 5 p.m. It could be where they need to show up at 5 p.m. It could mean that it can only be 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. or something like that. It just depends on the agency and however they work that. And that's also a negotiation thing. Say you already have workers that are just working throughout your area and you know that they all need to be back home essentially before the bus stops running, and you know they can only work until 9, or they can only work until 7, let's just say, and you can just work that out with the agencies, or you can just do it if the actual employees do not need to be there at a specific time. For example, if they have a day porter or a night porter service for janitorial, that just means that person needs to be there between these hours. Okay, now, so once you get the solicitation, say you do the site visit, what to do after you bid on a contract, or say you submit all the documentation on time, whether it's via email or in person, or you mail it and it's multiple copies and a thumb drive and a CD and all these other crazy things. Once you do that, what do you do now? Now you wait. That doesn't mean that as soon as you submit your documents that magically you have this contract and all this money is raining down on you like you are in, Players Club. That doesn't mean that. Anything can happen between when you submit your documents and when you actually perform, if you actually get the chance to perform. For example, if you submit your documents and the county just decides we didn't have any viable people bid on this contract, they could send you your documents back. If it was paper documents, send you your documents back and say, here, sorry, we don't want anyone. We don't want any of y'all. And that could be something personal where they didn't feel like anyone could meet the requirement, or it could have just meant that, never mind, we don't want this service. We just wanted to see if there were any vendors that were going to bid on this contract. If it was email, they could just ignore it, and you could follow up and ask if it has been a certain amount of days, especially if the submission date is July 1st and then July 5th they're supposed to award it, and it's July 10th, and you're asking the contracting officer, like, what's going on? Like, why has this been awarded? Are there any delays? Are there any issues? Did you receive it? And you always, if you're sending an email of your solicitation, make sure that you always ask for a confirmation. You may not always get it, but 8 times out of 10, you're gonna get some sort of confirmation. So once you submit your documentation on your bid, it could be broken up, but usually, especially at the local level, they're gonna want one single PDF put together, nice and pretty, emailed. So you always ask for a confirmation. I even put in the subject line, you're supposed to put the solicitation number or the RFP number, whatever it is, in the subject line, and they should give all those instructions in the bid documents. But I always put, like, please confirm receipt, or confirm receipt, something like that, whether it's in the subject line, if it's not too long, or in the first line stating, please confirm receipt of this solicitation. Because I've had many people tell me that they have submitted proposals and the contracting officer pretending like they never got it. And then they see someone else win, especially if someone else won and their pricing was like higher than yours, and then you reach out to the contracting officer like, hey, what is the issue? Why didn't I win this contract when this person's pricing was higher than mine? And that contracting officer said, I never received your proposal. Baby, we got a whole problem, because it takes a lot of effort and a lot of work to do all this documentation, but you can do it. Because if you look at solicitations, you look at the documents, most of the time it's just you filling out documents. And you might have to do an executive bio, you might have to do a cover page. All that stuff becomes redundant, and you're just copying and pasting once you get to a certain level of building your contracts. Now, of course, in my course, I do have templates. I have actual tech proposals that I am offering into my course as we speak, and it's for different industries, which can tremendously set you apart from some other agents, some other companies who are bidding on the same types of contracts. But anyway, when it comes to you bidding on a contract, you always ask for a confirmation of receipt. And the same thing goes when you're doing a hand delivery or mail. Now, if you're mailing it, say you're doing FedEx overnight or FedEx 2 days, whatever the case may be, as long as the agency receives it before the due date, then your FedEx slip, or UPS or USPS, whatever the case may be, that slip is your confirmation of when you submitted it. So once it's out of your hands, there's really nothing you can do about it, but you know that you submitted it within a time period, telling the post office that I need this delivered by 8 a.m. on Thursday, when the solicitation is due 5 p.m. on that Thursday. You know that you told them that it was supposed to be delivered this day. Usually that's okay. When you deliver your packet solicitation in person, you always want to get some sort of receipt. Oh, I can't tell you how many times, like, the contracting officer or whoever was supposed to receive it was not present, and the person who was receiving it, they're like, oh, I got you. Oh, no, ma'am, I don't know you. I don't trust you. You need to write something with your name. Like, if it's, let's just say it's Fulton County, Georgia water system, Deborah Allen, the time and the date, and writing my company on there. Like, I need you to, and I take a picture just to make sure I have it. Sometimes I take a picture of the person. Like, I'm not playing with these people. Like, I'm not playing, because I don't know what they're doing. They could take my packet and sit it on their desk, and it's due later that day. And they're like, oh, I forgot, I got somebody's whole packet on their desk. It could be thousands or millions of dollars that they have sitting on their desk. At least I know I turned it in. Now, whatever happens after that, what happens, but you always want to get a confirmation, because I cannot tell you honestly how many times I have had people who weren't even at work, especially during COVID. They weren't even there, and so, like, the security guard had to take my packet. I'm like, this is crazy. But you always want to get a receipt, and sometimes they will have like a little punch thing. Anyone who was like older and you actually had to like punch in the work, like you put your little packet, or you put a piece of paper underneath the punch thing, and it stamps the time and the date of when it was received, and they use that as long as it's before the time and the date that the actual solicitation is due. Okay, boom. So now you turned it in successfully, and then the agency is like, okay, we have people that have been awarded pricing with, everyone who bid on it. They'll send everyone's pricing as like a single document. Sometimes it's called bid tabulation. And you'll see, okay, my price is way too high, so I know that's why I did not win. And they will say in a solicitation, if it's lowest price, technically acceptable, or something like that. Sometimes they ask for best value, whatever the case may be. So if you know that that's what it is, there's no need really to ask for a debrief unless you just want to get more feedback. Some agencies will not, they're supposed to by law give you a debrief, but they may just say, oh, your price was too high, and that's it. So just know that that's normal, and always ask for a debrief as much as you can. I guess it really depends on how many you submit. At one point we were submitting about 5 per week, so it was exhausting, but you're supposed to keep some sort of spreadsheet of everything that you have submitted if you're just doing the bidding process. We're not talking about those who are doing all the fancy other stuff. We're talking about someone who's just going out there getting solicitations and bidding. Keep some sort of metrics, and then you're supposed to track your metrics with go or no go. So if you're getting a lot of no goes, meaning like you're not winning anything, you have to figure out why. So you may be wanting to ask for a debrief more and more, because it may just be your pricing. And if the pricing is so low every single time that you cannot do it, you might be in the wrong industry. And you might want to choose something else that you can work with. You can't find people for that price. Nowhere in the world you're going to be able to do janitorial, paying people $9 an hour. This may not be your industry. So boom, those are people who didn't win. So you win, yay, exciting, you won, yes. Now it's time to execute, okay? This is probably the most important part. All that other stuff is easy, because you can win a contract just by someone knowing you and they're like, hey, you come on this contract. But really, when you are executing, especially as a prime contractor, like you found a solicitation, you bid on the solicitation, you won, you are now trying to execute and manage this contract, that's where the real work starts. All the other stuff is easy. You need to execute flawlessly. That is something that a lot of people don't get, because respectfully, they don't have the discipline to execute on a contract. So they make a lot of excuses as to why they can't get something done. The government cares not. Just think about any other important job or industry, like with a doctor. Let's just say a doctor is a surgeon and he's like, oh, I went into this person's body with no gloves because the person didn't have the gloves in the room. That's not an excuse. But those are the types of excuses that is, not necessarily life-threatening, but those are the types of excuses that I hear daily. Like excuses just, they hurt my head. And so as a contractor, you have to make this thing work. And in the movie War Dogs, yeah, it was a bit extreme and some of the stuff is exaggerated, but a lot of stuff that they did was legit. That was their actual story. And them driving through Baghdad, like literally the ring of death, like that's the level that you need to be on to execute this contract, especially when we're talking about a lot of money, because these agencies are gonna let you know that they spent a lot of money on you to execute this contract. And respectfully, if you're a minority, if you're a woman, especially if you're a woman in a male-dominated field, there's already gonna be a microscope on what you do. And this is not something Sheena's making up. This is stuff that I hear every day, whether it's contractors that are below or alongside me. These are employees that I have personally. These are my executive staff. These are contracting officers. These are prime contractors that I work with. This is coming from every which way. So if you're someone who likes to make excuses, you need to check that once you win this contract. Point blank, period. Make sure that you execute flawlessly. Now, some of us get into industries that we don't really know, and if you've been following me for a while, I teach about building your business first. The government is just your client. You need to be clear about what you need to do. Now, if you forgot, or say you have a whole bunch of contracts running at the same time, it can get confusing what I'm supposed to be doing. Always refer back to your contract, because after you submit your solicitation and they say, hey, you won, you should have a contract that comes back to you. It's gonna be based usually on the solicitation, but you need to make sure that the math is mathing and that all the configurations are correct. It's like, well, I don't remember that being a part of the solicitation, but you added it in the contract. This is a people business. Anything can happen. Don't put anything past a contracting officer or facility manager or anyone who's in charge of this contract. Don't put anything past them. That doesn't mean just because they're a contracting officer or they're a facility manager that they are law. I mean, technically they are law, but don't allow them to do whatever they want to do when it's not in your contract. That is something that happens daily. I am not exaggerating. There are certain ways where you get pushed just a little bit more to where you're just actually doing stuff that has nothing to do with the contract anymore. And once you give that little bit of grace, now make it make sense, right? If you know that sweeping underneath a trash can is not a part of your scope, but it probably is good to sweep under the trash can. I mean, that's like a, an example for janitorial, but it makes sense. But if they're saying, oh no, you need to dust the cobwebs that are 50 feet in the air, and for those in janitorial, you're not supposed to go above 6 to 10 feet above ground level without it being a special project, then yeah, don't get on a ladder and climb up in front of this building and dust the cobwebs because you feel like the contracting officer is like correct. That's not how that works. So you need to execute and be clear about what your contract says and what you're supposed to do on your contract, because as you grow and you start getting really, really large contracts, there's gonna be a lot of people that you're gonna manage, whether you're managing your employees, you're managing subcontractors. Everybody needs to know what's going on. And if you loosen the reins just a little bit, anything can happen. And I've had this multiple times, especially when I'm working with someone who has never been in that field, or they've never worked with the government, or there's something different about what they do because, hey, they're a good worker, let me bring them on, or it can't be that hard, it's just janitorial. Boy, somebody said that to me again and we're gonna fight. Like, don't tell me janitorial is not hard. Like, stop saying that. Stop saying you wanna get into janitorial because it's easy. It's not. When it comes to you executing your contract, make sure you are clear and make sure everyone else is clear. Make sure, especially when it comes to subcontractors, they know when they're gonna get paid. Because I don't know where some of these contractors have come from, but they think as soon as they're done, they get paid. I'm like, boo-boo. You finished today, I haven't even submitted the invoice and you're already asking for a payment. As you grow and you get more money, then you can probably do that, especially if it's like a lower amount or whatever. But no, you have to work in some sort of payment terms with your subcontractor, and then employees are employees. So if they're actually W-2 employees on payroll, then they're probably getting paid every week, every 2 weeks. So that's a little bit different. But when it comes to contractors who are working for you or providing the service, or they even like subcontracting companies, like the whole company is getting paid, make sure that they're clear about when they're getting paid. So that goes into your contract with your subcontractors as well. So that's like, when I tell you that's important, like, I need y'all to look into my eyes. Like, that is so important. It's really, really, it can make or break your business, make or break your relationship with the agency, with your sub. So many things can happen in that process. So it's really, really important to know what your contract states. Now, there are like task order contracts or blanket purchase agreements, or those types of larger contracts where they just need someone to do IT services. So they might just say IT services, and it could be a plethora of things. So it's not necessarily in that task order contract or blanket purchase agreement. It may not say the specifics of that thing that you're gonna provide, but when it comes down to the purchase order, make sure that that's clear what you're gonna do, and make sure there's a clear communication between you and whoever you're working with, the facility manager, the IT CIO, or whatever the case may be. Everyone knows what's going on. Everybody knows what to expect, because also what can damage you is if someone expects something that you are not supposed to provide. Soon as that outside person, that's not the facility manager, not the CIO, they're just an employee that works in that building, if they come to you and they're like, oh, you guys aren't doing that, and they say that to your employee, you're not even around. Your employee, a lot of times they're just gonna execute. They're gonna say, oh yeah, no problem, I'm gonna do that. But that was never part of your scope. But the expectation is now that that's what this company is doing. That's what you all are supposed to be providing. And then those people, those employees who are working in that building as government employees or whatever the case may be, they will tell on you and say they're not doing what they're supposed to do, when they never even knew what you were supposed to do in the first place. So that's just a really key component about executing your contract. Once you bid, again, that's the easy part, but you need to understand your business. You need to understand, this don't look right. Like, what is this? I've never cleaned the walls. I've never cleaned the ceilings Like this is not even a part of any contract, but someone says, oh, look at that, you need to do that. Like make sure that you're clear about what you're supposed to do. Another component is ensuring that you have your invoicing system in place. Lord of mercy. Make sure you know what's supposed to go on your invoice. When I tell you, a lot of these companies, these agencies, they won't even acknowledge your invoice until weeks after you submit it. Let's paint a picture. So, a certain school system that I've worked with, they are not that great at acknowledging my invoices when I submit them or confirming receipt. So, I'm at the mercy of whenever they want to respond. So I'll submit an invoice, let's just say July 1st, and I'm hoping that it gets paid immediately because I need my money, right? But net 30 is our terms. And if they pay early, then that's a great day. But there is a small chance that they didn't acknowledge the invoice, they didn't see it, they only look at invoices one time a month, whatever the case may be, and your invoice is wrong, meaning it doesn't have the purchase order number on there. It's not broken down properly the way that they want it. Even for this particular story that I'm giving you, within the contract, it states this is how invoices are supposed to look. So we followed that to a T. But no, when we submitted the invoice, and we submitted invoices prior to that. We submitted invoices prior to that following the contract, but there's magically this particular month, we weren't doing the invoices correctly. They said it needs to be broken down like boom, 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 boom. Okay, so it's already day 20. For example, is July 20th. Now, mind you, I submitted the invoice July 1st. Now it's July 20th when I'm doing my second, third, fourth follow-up, like, hey, did you receive my invoice? Oh no, your invoice was wrong. Okay, thanks for just now telling me that this invoice is wrong. And so then you resubmit the invoice, guess what happens? Your clock just started over. Another 30 days, baby. Like, it's really, really bad. And sometimes, depending on who the accounts payable, make accounts payable your best friend. When I tell you that is, forget everybody else, make accounts payable your best friend if at all possible. But with your clock starting all over, now whoever you're paying, they also are feeling the brunt of that mistake, essentially. So I would say once you win an award, even if in the solicitation it states how the invoice is supposed to be created, even if it states in the contract, I would always verify. If you can get someone on the phone and ask, I'm looking at page 5, where it states the invoices have to be sent to the wrong email. That was another thing where I guess they changed who it was supposed to be going to, unbeknownst to us. So you ask, is this the correct invoicing information? Before we even finish our job, I wanna know, is this all correct? Get someone on the phone, and this is all, of course, hindsight. Get someone to tell you how the invoice is supposed to be broken down so you don't have to delay, because if you already went 20 days, now essentially you can go another 30 days. Sometimes the agencies are like, well, that's your fault. You made a mistake. And even though it wasn't your mistake, it's still your mistake, because guess what? Still getting paid probably on the 1st and the 15th or every 2 weeks. So they're not usually concerned about you. There are some accounts payable people who are very sympathetic. I always say, hey, look, I'm a small business. Like, I can't have $50,000 just in the hole, and then my contracting officer is trying to beat down my door to get his money when I have all these other things to pay for. A lot of them don't really care about that, honestly. And that goes back to one of the other videos when I talk about trying to use the net 10 and net 20 terms, but that's only if they actually adhere to that. Now, there's a whole bunch of legal parameters that you can get into when it comes to them not doing, executing on net 30 or executing on whatever net terms that you have. And, feel free to contact an attorney to make sure that they're executing the way that they're supposed to. But generally speaking, it will cost more time and energy to contact an attorney. And just to make sure that your stuff is right from the beginning is probably your most advantageous way that you should do this. Also, we always include a 1 to 3% late charge on all of our invoices. So we've had some agencies tell us, oh, we don't pay for late fees. I'm like, I'm putting it in this invoice. But then also you're kind of going into, if you put the late fee as a separate invoice, or if you add it into a new invoice, they could possibly delay the pay again, where they're asking, remove that late fee. We don't do that, even though it was in our contract. Again, you can get into the legal parameters of that, but we always add it to all of ours, and we just charge our 1% or 3% late fee on any late invoice, and that's for every 30 days. So that's another tip that you can do when it comes time for you to, when you put in your solicitation, your proposal. And I've had agencies tell me, well, we don't do that. Well, it was in my proposal and you accepted it. So what are we talking about? So it's really a personal business decision if you want to go about ensuring that they adhere to that, but we do it and it is what it is. So that part, you bid, submit, confirm, execute, invoice, right? When you get paid, some agencies, they pay subs directly. Very few have programs where they pay the subs directly. So let's pretend like we're not talking about that right now. We're not gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about you're paying your subs directly. Always make sure that everybody is the same across the board. You need to send me an invoice. We ain't doing no Cash App, we ain't doing no Zelle, we ain't doing none of that. Because what's gonna happen, that's all fine and good when you have 1 or 2 contractors. When you have 20 contractors, you can't, first of all, Zelle has a limit and Cash App has a limit. And it's really harder to track because the money is coming out of Cash App, but then also it's coming out of your bank. So it's after a lot of transactions, it's kind of challenging for even a good accountant or a bookkeeper to keep track of that. And if you're doing it yourself, forget it. You'll be all jumbled up with, I even had a contractor where I was doing deposits into his bank, like pulling cash out of my account, putting it into his account, and that was a nightmare because that's one contractor out of the other 20 that I was working with. So I'm like all over the place. They need to send an invoice and it needs to be detailed. The same way you got to provide a detailed invoice to the agency is the same way that this contractor, whomever, has to provide an invoice to you. It's only fair. It's for your document repository. It's to keep track of what money is what. A lot of times when you do anything, any transactions at the bank, even if you ask for notes, it's still hard for the notes to be inputted correctly. And so I just found out the other day that you gotta, like when you do a bank transaction, you gotta add the receipt manually online after you leave the bank. So that's a whole other process. So we ain't doing that. We are doing only electronic payments. I don't do no check. And this is for employees too. I will not give you a check, period. If you're on a bank, if you don't have a bank account, or if you don't have Chime, or if you don't have any of these other systems to get paid, you can't work here, period. Why should I be inconvenienced because you don't have a bank account, or you can't even get a check-in, like a check card? There's so many different ways to get paid. Like you need to have something where the money can automatically be deposited, point blank, period. We stopped that a long time ago. All my contractors have a signed blanket contract with us saying that these are the rules that they're gonna follow, and that's it. If you don't like it, then you can't be a contractor with us. And we have lost contractors because they didn't wanna jump ship. So you get the solicitation, you bid on it, you submit it, you confirm it, you execute, you invoice, and then you pay your people. Beautiful harmony. And of course that is an example of something that's maybe like a one and done, not necessarily for something that's going to continue on months and months. I'll do another video about like milestone payments or milestone contracting, but this is more like they came in, did a service and left it all within a shorter period of time, say like less than a month. So with that, that is the way that what you do after you bid. That is what you do after you bid on contracts. You have to follow kind of this path. And generally speaking, I'm going to be talking about janitorial and facilities and that type of thing. It's going to be different with each industry, but pretty much that's how a lot of it works. So make sure you like, comment, and you subscribe. Join our circle community. The link is in the description. It's lit in there. We have conversations. We answer questions. Over 100 people in there talking about government contracting because they are government contracting money makers. That's all we do. That's what we birth around here is government contracting money makers. Send it to someone who is scared to bid. Send it to someone who doesn't understand bidding. Send it to someone who is looking to figure out how to bid on contracts. Save this for yourself and watch it over and over and over and over. When you get to these certain portions of your contract, take notes, right? Leave a comment in the description. Please share all your wonderful stories of whether I helped you or even if another government contractor who is out here teaching how they helped you in contracting. Any stories you want to share about your first contract, your worst contract, your best contract, problems that you've had with subcontractors, anything like that. The stories really, really help everyone who's in this arena who feel like they're alone. You're not alone. You got me, because I'll be out here And make sure that you follow my Instagram. It's the same name, Sheenapreneur. Until next time, your favorite veteran.